Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think, yes, I am a couple of minutes late. I'm so sorry. So if you've been waiting for me, thank you so much for waiting. Oh, there we go. You know how you look at your watch and you've got 20 minutes before you need to do something, and then you look at your watch and all of a sudden you're late? Yeah, that was me today. I've had a busy day of design. I've been designing projects for events to do with my team and also for classes, which is one of my very favourite things to do. So I've spent most of this week and this morning as well doing that, which has been a lot of fun. I've now cleared the decks because I'm going to do some seaside stamping and creating with you this afternoon. I can see Mary's here. Welcome, Mary. Let me know if the sound is okay. And I'm just going to grab my iPad and make sure that everything looks all right. Which I didn't have handy, but luckily it was within reach. So let me just prop it up on a beanbag and find myself on here and make sure everything is looking good. I can't test the sound on here, but I can see that I'm live, so that's always a positive, isn't it? Okay, so it would help if I put my microphone on. Is that better? I do hope it is. I haven't been saying anything desperately important, but I do hope that you could hear it, albeit faintly, but that should be much better because I put my microphone on. It does no good at all to plug it in and then not wear it. So there we go. Things can only improve from here on in. So, Stampin' Up news. Thank you, Mary. Brilliant. Sound and picture good. Fabulous. Thank you so much for letting me know. Tell me if anything changes as we go through. So, Stampin' Up news. I don't have anything earth-shattering to tell you about, really. Just reminders. So, celebration is continuing until the end of February. I told you last week that Stampin' Up have added some new items. 8, I think there were, if I remember rightly. 8 new items that you can get for free with a £45 purchase, or there's one of them I think is with a £90 purchase, and those are all catalogue items. So if you've had your eye on anything in the catalogue, you might be able to get it for free now with a purchase. If you need more information on that, you can always message me or go to my website, which is sallybowman.stampinup.net, which is easy to find. Okay, so that's celebration. I'm going to show you when I put the camera down the sweet sampler By the Bay, and it's no coincidence that I'm creating with the By the Bay suite this afternoon. So I'll show you what's included in the sweet sampler, and you can order one of those if you fancy. As far as class bookings are concerned, the March Fancy Fold Cards class needs to be booked by, I think it's next Friday. I'm just going to lean across and look on my wall. February the 24th, which I think is actually 2 weeks time, isn't it? 2 weeks today. So you've got a little while to book the March Fancy Fold Cards class. If you'd like more information on that, I'm always happy to send it out to you. But I think that's it really for the notices. So I'm going to turn the camera down and show you the By the Bay suite. And then we'll do some crafting. So just bear with me while I get all this in place. First of all, let's reverse the camera and let's just see what kind of a job I can do with my tripod this week. We'll see. Some weeks are good, some weeks are not so good. Well, that's not too bad. So you just need to see a little bit more of the bottom, don't you, of my grid paper. Let's see if that's enough of a tilt. Let's bring that forward and let me just reach the clip to hold that cable out of the way. There we are. That's not too bad. Not too bad. Do you think I'm getting better at this? I have to do everything the opposite way round to the way it shows on the screen, and if you've been watching me for any length of time, you will know that I can't do that very well. I like to think I have talents, but that is not one of them. Okay, so hopefully that's got that cable out of the way. It's a really beautiful, bright, sunny day here where I live, in this little hamlet in the New Forest, and that means that the light is pretty good. All right, so let me bring this in to show you. This is the By the Bay Suite sampler. I've got the images stamped and I've got the die cuts cut for you. So to start with the stamps, there are lots of stamped images and 3 sets of words. Thank you for everything, heartfelt sympathy, and you are a pearl, rare and precious, which is quite nice, isn't it? I mean, you wouldn't send it to everybody, but to send a card to a special person or to mark your appreciation for something, I think that's really nice. Then we've got this lovely texture stamp, which is particularly good for stamping kind of sand or pebbles. But I was also thinking the other day that it's actually a bit like a starling murmuration. If you've ever watched those amazing flocks of starlings or other birds in the sky wheeling in perfect synchronization at sunset, I reckon that could be a starling murmuration. I haven't tried with it yet, but I'm going to. There's this image here with sand and shells. Then we've got a mussel shell, I think that's a murex, a snail shell, a pearl, a beautiful kind of oyster type shell with a pearl in it. We've got a crab. I'm going to cough, excuse me. Oh, sorry. And then we've got some little birds. I've been told this is a sanderling. I keep meaning to look it up and check. I'm not great on shorebirds. But anyway, a little wading bird and then a little flock of wading birds here. And these all have matching dies. And these 3 shells are cut from this stamp here. So there is a die that cuts out just the shells, which I think is a great idea. And then dies which are independent of stamps. We've got 2 for little scallop shells, 2 for larger scallop shells, 1 for this clam shell, and there's some beautiful texture on that. Let me see if I can get the light on it and show you. Yeah, I think you can just see that, and it scores across here as well, so you can actually fold it. And then we've got some kind of seagrass here, or reeds, or whatever you want them to be. And then this one here, which gives you a really nice kind of horizon line, or shoreline, or sand dunes, again, whatever you want it to be. So you'll find this in the new mini catalogue. The bundle, which is the stamp set and the dies, is $51.25. That will of course get you something free for celebration as well, or you can get the 2 items separately. I'm going to show you the sampler because along with the stamps and dies there are some absolutely beautiful papers and some lovely embellishments. So I've put together partial packs of things within the By the Bay suite, and I've added some card and paper to it. So if you'd like to have a go at creating this, but you don't know whether you actually want to buy everything, if you get a sampler, then you get bits and pieces of everything, and then you can decide if you want to buy some full packs of things. So let me show you the paper first. You'll get half a pack of this By the Bay paper, which is beautiful. So 2 6x6 sheets of each design. So this one has shells on it. I'll show you the other side in a moment. This one's got a really nice kind of impressionistic type beach. Then we've got textures of green there. Got waves. We've got more sea creatures here. We've got crabs and the little bird and shells. We've got more green and blue textures. Oops. I'm trying to get these all the same way up. One side is a speciality side, which I'll show in a minute, and one side is normal, which is this side. Beautiful mussels print. We've got another scenic one. This one goes really well either way up. We've got little birds and crabs, and the dies will actually cut out this bird and the crab. got more shells, more greens and blues, and then a really nice kind of distressed painted board. And then if I turn them over, I'll show you the specialty side. So this has either gold or pearl printing on it. It's kind of an iridescent pearl finish. I don't know if the camera's picking that up. I'm just looking at my iPad when it catches up. It's showing it very slightly. You can just see the light glinting off that. It's very difficult to show you, but it's beautiful. And this one has lines in the pearl finish. I think that one perhaps showed a little bit better. This is mussels with a slightly different print, but again, some of those mussels have got that pearl finish on them. Then we've got one with gold. You've got these beautiful swooshes of colour with gold foiling on. I love these fish in gold, and there's very, very fine lined background on that. Then we've got this kind of watery wave pattern, again with a pearl finish. Those fine lines are a pearl finish. We've got this pattern again. This is a bit like the rays on a shell, but with pearl on it. We've got more fish with a different coloured background. We've got more colour with gold. Same pattern again in pearl, but with a different coloured background. And then finally the Shoreline with very fine gold lines in the background. So the papers are absolutely beautiful. So you get a half a pack of paper. You'll need some coordinating cards. So I've given you a sheet of Coastal Cabana, one of Night of Navy, a balmy blue, and a petal pink. And I've given you half a sheet, which is a quarter of a pack, of the pearlescent specialty paper, which isn't featured in the suite, but I think works really well with it, particularly if you're die cutting shells. I'm hoping that will show. It's sort of an oyster colour with a beautiful pearlescent sheen. I'm not sure the pearlescence is showing on screen, but it's lovely. Take my word for it. Then I will also give you a quarter of a reel of the coordinating ribbon. This is white with balmy blue, and it's a kind of an ombre effect. It's really lovely. It feels like a kind of a seam binding ribbon. It ties beautifully, really easy to tie. So there's a quarter of a reel of that, which gives you about 2¼ meters. And then a quarter of a pack of the flat adhesive backed pearls. So these are iridescent. There's some large ones and some small ones, and I'll try and show you that they are flat. So they're not domed on top like our pearls typically are. No, it's not sure. I'm just going to turn it up a little bit more and try and show you. They're kind of flat on top, a little bit as if someone's squashed them while they were warm. They're beautiful. So there we are. So the By the Bay sampler then. If you can collect it from me, it's £14. And if you'd like me to post it to you, I just add on the cost of postage and a board-backed envelope. So that would be £16.50 posted to you. And you have until March the 3rd. That's the first Friday in March to order it. In terms of the pricing, I just work out the cost of everything, going with the catalogue prices, add everything together, and then round it up to the nearest pound. So you're effectively paying catalogue prices, but you're having smaller quantities. So if you'd like one of those, you can email me, handmadeathome@hotmail.co.uk, or you can send me a message and I will sort that out for you. Right, let me put that somewhere safe. So that's the sampler, and then I'll give you some ideas today as to what you could make with it. Now, I'm obviously going to recommend that you add on the stamps and dies because they coordinate so beautifully with everything. So I've got some of the papers here, and I've made a petal pink card base. And I've got some bits that don't want to come out of my envelope here. There we go. And I'll give you the measurements in just a moment. So there we go, petal pink card base. I've got a white insert, and I've got some of the Muscles paper. This is the paper without the sheen on it. And then I've got a coordinating design. So I had a look at the paper, which has got Night of Navy, Balmy Blue, Mint Macaron, Petal Pink and White in it. So I picked another paper that had the same colours in it, and I've just cut a narrow strip of that. So I'm going to glue those down first of all. I've got an extra little strip of the Muscles paper, which I'm going to use on my insert, and then I've got some white card for a sentiment. So this is a very straightforward card if you're new to card making, or if you haven't got the stamps, then you can still make this card. So I've cut the paper to give me an 1/8 of an inch border to the right and left, and no border at the top and bottom. So I'm just sliding that with my glue to get it straight. So I'm going to leave a border between them and a border to the right of this paper, but it's the same length paper as the card base. There we are. And I've got some linen thread here, which I just felt went really nicely with this. I'm going to wrap it round 3 times so that it sits over that narrower strip of paper. There we are. Let's try and get that straight. And then I'm going to tie it towards the top. Find some blue tack to go on the corners of that grid paper. I keep catching it with my arms and it's annoying me. There we are, that should be better. Okay, let's sort out this bow. Get the loops even. If you have difficulty with getting the bow tight enough, you can always roll up a mini glue dot and just pop it underneath the knot of the bow, and that will hold it in place nicely. And then I'm going to add a sentiment. So I've got just a little strip of white here. Now the size of this will depend on the sentiment you're using. I've dug out my Something Fancy stamp set, which I really like, and I'm going to use this little Happy Birthday here, which is quite, it's long but quite narrow top to bottom. So I've got a piece cut to, I think this is 3/8 of an inch, because I know, no, 1/2 an inch. I know that's a good size for this stamp, but if you're new to stamping, then I suggest you start with a bigger piece of white, stamp your words, and then just cut it down, because that will be easier for you. So I've got Night of Navy ink, and I've got my stamp on a much bigger block than it needs, because it's easier to see the borders of my little narrow strip of card if I've got a big block. If I got one of the little, just trying to think what it is, G, I think, the little narrow blocks like that, although it fits the stamp beautifully, it's much harder to stamp on a narrow piece of card because you can't see where the edges are, because they coincide with the edge of the stamp. Now I'm just going to cut this down. And add some mini stamping dimensionals on the back. You could of course glue it flat instead. If you're looking for a men's card, I think this design would work really well. I would probably substitute the colour of the card base and use either mint macaron or balmy blue for my card base, or even white. But beyond that, this would be perfect for a man's card. Very simple and straightforward. So let's do the insert. I'm going to glue down my piece of paper. I think this will be a little bit too long probably, because it's just a sort of an offcut. I keep all these narrow strips that you often get when you're cutting paper down because they're brilliant for inserts. And if I turn it over, it's very easy to cut it to precisely the right size. And then I'm just going to stamp the same happy birthday inside. Insert in. There we are. And that's my card finished. So very simple and straightforward, very quick. Change the sentiment and make it a happy birthday card. Sorry, no, this is a happy birthday card. Make it a thank you card. Change the card base colour and make it a brilliant card for men. So let me give you the measurements for that. Apologies if you can hear the dog barking. I hope I'm not going to have to go and answer the door for a parcel. Last week was ridiculous with 2 parcels coming, and I'm here on my own again today, so if the doorbell rings I may have to run, but let's hope not. Let's hope it's just the postie. So my card base was 5 3/4 of an inch by 8 inches, scored at 4 inches. My patterned paper, so design 1 was this narrow strip down here, 5 3/4 by 1 1/8 of an inch, and design 2 is this one with the mussel shells, 5 3/4 of an inch by 2.5 inches, and then my insert was 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. And obviously your white card here is going to be whatever you need for your particular sentiment stamp. So I have made a slightly stepped up version as well, just to show you that if you want to go a little bit further you can. Oh, and I've just found these in my bag. I did mean to put these on. Haha, let's do that, shall we? Let's put those on, give it a little bit of bling. So these are a couple of the flat-backed pearls. Yeah. I was looking at it thinking, thought I'd put pearls on, but I hadn't got any pearls, so I thought, no, perhaps I wasn't going to, but then I found them in the bag. There we go. A couple little pearls there. They just catch the light. All right, so going back to my stepped up version, which is here. So can you spot what I've done? Obviously, I've changed the colour of the card base. So I've added a layer of contrast card here. So my card base is mint macaron, and I've added a layer of balmy blue card. So both those colours are in the paper. I've used the same paper. I've used a piece of ribbon here. This is the Night of Navy ribbon that's in the mini catalogue. I didn't use the coordinating ribbon with this suite just because it got a little bit lost with the patterns. I needed something a little bit bolder. And then on my sentiment here, I've stamped and embossed it in white embossing powder. So I've heat embossed this on mint macaron card, and then I've mounted it on some balmy blue card, and I've added 3 pearls instead of 2. So that's my stepping up. And if you want the measurements for that one, they're broadly the same. So the card base is the same size. Then my contrast card layer is 5 3/4 by 3 3/4 of an inch. Then the patterned paper is slightly smaller to allow for that contrast card. So the narrow strip is 5 3/4 by 1 inch, and the wider one is 5 3/4 by 2 3/8 of an inch. But other than that, the measurements are the same as the other one. So let me just see if there are any questions. No, you're all very quiet today. Shout if you've got any questions. I'm just going to clean that stamp. And then I'll come on to another card. So for this one, I've gone much more all out. I've used several different stamp sets, some different techniques, and I'll pull out all my bits and pieces, and then I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let me show you the card first of all. So this is a little bit bigger card. This is 5 by 7, I think it is. Yeah, this is a 5 by 7 inch card. Pick it up and show you a little bit closer as well. Trying to get that straight. I'm just so rubbish at this. There we are. So we've got an inked background. We've got some stamping. We've got a die cut bird, and I've actually coloured this bird in with markers, which is how I've got so many different colours on one stamp. And then I've used a little trick with the ovals here as well, which I will show you. So let's have a play around and make one of these. Again, I'll give you the measurements at the end. So this is my piece of card for stamping. I'm almost sure. I'm just going to double check. Yes. So the first thing I did was I took a piece of scrap card, so the colour of this doesn't matter, and I die cut it using this long die. So I just die cut it at the edge using this long die, because that's going to give me a mask which will shape some of my inking. So to start with, I'm going to use the straight edge. So I've got, this is the shaped edge here, and this edge is straight. I'm going to use that, and I'm lining it up on my grid paper like that to give me a nice straight edge to work against. I'm going to use balmy blue ink and an ink blending brush to create the sky first of all. So I don't want too much ink on this. I just want my sky quite pale. So I rub some ink from the ink pad onto the brush. Then I like to blend the ink on just on a clear block. That just helps stop it being blobby on here. And then I can always just check it on here to make sure I don't have any obvious blobs. and then I'm going to brush the ink onto my card using a circular motion and being careful that when I first hit the card with the brush, my hand is moving. So what I don't want to do is put it down like that. I want to be moving. So I always move my hand a little bit in the air, get that circular motion going before I come down and touch the card. And you could hold down the right and left hand sides of this mask, this card, with some tape if you were worried about it moving, but I like to live life on the edge, so I'm just holding it down. There we are. So that's quite a pale sky. There's not much ink on there, but when I move the mask, I expect you'll be able to see. There we go. I'm hoping that it's showing up, that there is a boundary there. Yes, it is. So I've got a really straight line. So that's my horizon there. And then I'm going to bring in the sea. So I'm going to cover up what I did before. First of all, I'm going to actually put this straight on my grid paper. Then I'm going to use the straight edge to cover along that horizon line. So I'm covering up the ink I already put on there, and I'm going to use the same colour, which is balmy blue, but a little bit more ink this time. Let's just make sure it's blended in the bristles. I'm going to hold my mask in place, and then I'm going to ink the area underneath it. So there's a little bit more intense ink being laid down here. And I'm letting it fade out towards the bottom. I'm not worrying too much about that being straight. My mask has just moved, so I can put that back, but I needed to get some more ink anyway. So let's do that first. Okay, so I'm now just going to make sure that my card is straight, that my mask is straight. There we are. I'm sorry if my hand is in your way, but I'll pick this up in a minute and show you. There we are. So now I've got light blue, the same blue but more ink, so it looks darker, and then at the bottom I've got nothing. So that's my sea and my sky, and now I'm going to add in my kind of mud flats and beach. So I'm going to change blending brushes to one that I use for pale browns, and I'm going to take my same mask, but this time I've got this irregular edge at the top, and I'm going to lay this that way up, sorry, covering up most of my sea. Let me see if I can do it sideways, then you'll be able to see a little bit better what I'm doing. There we are. So sky, sea, I'm going to cover up most of the sea here. And here I've got kind of the uneven bottom edge of that blue. So let's pick up some Sahara sand ink, blend it on a different clean block, hold my mask in place, and then I'm going to run this down in a circular motion again across the bottom of that mask, and the Sahara sand, the light brown ink, will mix with the little bit of blue that I've still got showing. Pick up some more brown. Just replace my mask. And just a little bit more. This is quite a pale brown, so you need to apply more ink than you would with a darker brown, but it is much easier to control than if I was using, say, soft suede, where I would have to be using so little ink that it would be very easy to add too much. There we are. So I've now got my kind of irregular area of beach, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast to that And I'm kind of trying to move this along a little bit, making sure that if it goes up here, then it goes down on here, just to add a little bit more interest. Let's bring that down a little bit more. Actually, let me turn that sideways. There we go. I don't want to go too wild with this. I just want to add a little bit more ink across this, a little bit further down towards what's the bottom of my card, although I'm holding it sideways. There we are. Just to add another line on there. Now this always goes through, I find anyway, an ugly phase before it starts to improve, and I'm getting probably to that ugly phase where it all looks a little bit obvious and a little bit liney. But don't worry about that, just keep going. So I'm now using some yellow. This is So Saffron ink. Should have turned over my block, but I think I'll get away with that. There we are. I've turned it over to the clean side. And now I'm just going to blend this up from the bottom of my card, just to add a bit of a kind of a sandier colour. So we've got yellowish brown in the front, then we've got pale brown, then we've got the sea and the sky. There we are. So that is my final inked background. And I'm going to do some stamping next. So let me move these inky blocks out of the way. Alright, so I'm going to stamp that little group of birds, and I'm going to stamp some reeds, all in soft suede. So I've got two images here for the kind of the reeds or the grasses, and these two are from the Oceanfront stamp set. It's this one and this one. So if you have other sea or beach themed stamp sets, then you can definitely bring them in. They will work really well. I'm going to stamp some of these grasses here, and some over here as well. There we are. And I'm going to add in some of these taller ones in the foreground. Stamped it lower there so that it looks like a smaller image. There we are. So as I'm getting closer to the front, my images are getting larger to give that sense of perspective. And then I bring in these three little birds. And I don't know if I want to stamp them full strength or slightly lighter. I'm going to go with slightly lighter, I think, so I'm going to stamp them off because they're in the distance. There we are. So that's my three little birds. I need some sand on this, and I'm going to go with Sahara Sand ink. Clean one of these blocks because I need to use it to pop my stamp on. I've forgotten to get that one out. There we are. So it's this one here. I'm going to stamp some sand in the foreground. And then some towards the back as well. So as I go further back, I'll stamp off and then stamp on my project. So that's just to make it a little bit paler, a little bit less distinct and give a sense of distance. Let's use a bit of scrap card. I don't want to get sand across that bird. So I'm just going to cover him up with my little scrap of card that I had for the mask and stamp over it. There we are. And if you've got any imperfections in your inky background, don't worry, because your stamping is going to cover a lot of that up. And the eye is going to be drawn to the images rather than the background. I've got a slight smudge there, but I'm not going to get stressed about it. Finally, I'm going to add some flying birds. And I've got my Mountain Air stamp set out, and I've used these flying birds here. It's such a useful stamp. Got an inky smudge on your card? Add some flying birds. I've done that many times. Those there. All right, and then my focal point is going to be the larger bird image. I'm going to pop him over here. So let me show you how I get a multicolored image. Obviously, if I stamp it using an ink pad, my image is going to be whatever color my ink pad is. But if I ink up my stamp using markers, then I can get several images on one stamp, sorry, several colours on one stamp. So here I've got Stampin' Right markers. So these are water-based, these are not stamping blends. These have got a round barrel and they are water-based, Stampin' Right markers. And they come with a fine end and a brush end. And I'm going to use the brush end to colour my stamp. And you can tell which end that is without having to take off both caps by looking for that broad band on the barrel of the pen. So I've got So Saffron, Sahara Sand, Petal Pink, Balmy Blue and Night of Navy. And I've got my stamp on a block, and all I'm going to do is colour in my stamp with whichever colour I want, wherever I want it. So I've got my pen with the brush tip on the side, and I'm going to colour in his legs with Petal Pink and also his beak. I'm going to add Sahara Sand for the feathers around his tummy. And you can see the ink on the stamp, so it's fairly easy to make sure that you don't miss any bits. Brown on his head. Then I'm going to use Balmy Blue for the rest of the feathers on his wings and tail and body, and then I'll come in over the top with some Night of Navy. Because that's dark, I can afford to go over the top of that paler blue. Also going to colour in his eye with dark blue. There we are. So hopefully I've coloured in all the images, all the areas on the stamp. I haven't actually used the So Saffron one in the end. I've got some scrap card here. I'm just going to breathe on my stamp because some of that ink will have started to dry. And because it's water-based, breathing on it will reactivate it and moisten it. Stamp as normal. And there is my multicoloured little bird. So I now need to die cut that, and here's one I prepared earlier to save me having to get my die cutting machine and fit it underneath the camera. And so he is ready to be popped over here somewhere. I think, and I'm going to pop him up on some dimensionals. there. And then I just need some little pieces of dimensional. I haven't got any edge strips at the moment, otherwise I would use those. But just some narrow strips for his legs. Otherwise they're kind of dangling in midair. And one for his beak. Take the backing off. Alright, so now let's layer up the cards. So I've got lots of pieces here. I will give you the measurements in a minute. Alright, so my contrast card is soft suede, which is the same colour as I did a lot of my stamping in. It's a brown I use a lot. I really like it with blue or pink. It's kind of a mid-tone brown. And then I'm going to layer this on, this time to a piece of petal pink. On the card I showed you at the beginning I used balmy blue. But who wants to make two identical cards? Not me. Actually, even when I want to make two identical cards, I can't make them identical. I don't know, something happens along the way. They end up different. So I've left my brown borders narrow so that they set off the colours but they don't kind of take over. The dark colours can draw your eye if you have them in large amounts. Getting towards the bottom of my glue. Right, so I just need some words on this now. So I'm going to make a thank you card. I send a lot of thank you cards, so I'm always happy to have another one. So this thank you is from Go To Greetings. You've seen me use this time and again. I love this stamp set. So it's this little thank you here. Brilliant stamp set. Happy birthday, thinking of you. Just a note and thank you in 3 different sizes, 3 different fonts. And then a bonus little hello stamp as well. So it's a fantastic set. You've always got what you need in the right size. So I'm stamping this just on a scrap of white card, and then I'm going to bring in my double oval punch. I'm actually only using the plain oval for this. So if I stamp first and then punch, I can make sure that my words are exactly in the centre of the oval. And depressing this just slightly will hold that card in place so I can check the alignment before I actually punch it out. And then I'm going to punch another one that's exactly the same. Some soft suede card. I've got a bonus one there for something else. And then this is my trick with the oval. You can do this with pretty much any punched shape. If you want to have one that's bigger than the other, but you haven't got a punch that's bigger, then by cutting your same size punched shape in half and offsetting it slightly behind, I'll show you the back in a minute, you can give the illusion that you have a larger shape and a smaller shape. But in fact, as you know, you've just seen me punch these, they are exactly the same size. So there is a gap behind, but that won't show once it's down on my card. So let's pop that up on some dimensionals as well. And tuck this just down at the bottom there. And then a couple of finishing touches. I've got a little piece of the linen thread here, and I'm just going to tie like a single knot in there, and then I'm going to wrap it round and through a second time, and that just gives me a kind of a long shaped, slightly more interesting knot. Don't know if you can see that. Might be focusing on something else. No, hopefully you can. And I'm just going to cut the ends off and fray those out a little bit. The linen thread kind of pulls to pieces very easily. And then I can either use my multi-purpose glue or a little rolled up mini glue dot for that. So I'm going to go for the glue dot. I usually do if I can. So I'm just going to hook my scissors under one end of the glue dot and kind of fold it over on itself, and do the same on the opposite side. And that gives me almost a little strip of glue, like a long rectangular mini glue dot. And that will just sit nicely underneath the knot of my thread. And then I'm going to pop a couple of those flat pearls down as well. Wearing one as well. Let's pop that back on there. So that's the front of my card. I just need to stamp the insert now. It's not the colour I want, this is the colour I want. So I'm going to stamp those three little birds inside. Let's stamp them off once, just so they're not too dark. And I'm going to stamp the gulls up there. I'm not putting words inside, it's a thank you card, so I want some space to write. And actually I've just put the wrong colour on that stamp. I want Sahara sand. I'm just going to stamp off once, make sure it's not too dark, and just kind of fill in the space here. Needs to sit upside down for a little while. Let's go to another one. my inside. Oops, see if I can actually fit it under the camera. There we are. And my front. And I'll bring back the first one. You can see it in the other colour. There we are. So the same, or as much the same as I could do it. I've just changed the colour of the card from blue to pink, balmy blue to petal pink. I promised you the measurements, which are here. So my card base was 10 inches by 7 inches, scored at 5 inches, which gives me a 5 by 7 card. My contrast card layers in soft suede are 4.5 by 6.5 inches. That's the bigger one, and then 3 7/8 of an inch by 5 7/8 of an inch. And then my blue or pink layer, 4 3/8 of an inch by 6 3/8 of an inch. And my card for stamping was 3 3/4 of an inch by 5 3/4 of an inch. And I haven't put the insert on there, but that's 4.5 by 6.5 inches. And then finally, I've just got one more card to show you, and to kind of show you how to get started. I'm not going to make the whole thing because we're out of time. This is actually my favourite card of all of today's cards. So let me show you that first of all. And it's this one. So I've made a kind of a speech themed wreath on here. Let me lift it up and show you. Up a bit more, yes I can. What shows on my phone, which is what I'm filming on, is actually smaller than what I think you can actually see. So there we go. So I'll give you the measurements. I have a petal pink card base, and I've stamped on it in petal pink ink. I've stamped a selection of the shells around that. I've got a layer of balmy blue and a layer of gold foil, and then I've got my piece that I'm stamping on, and I will show you how I got started on the wreath. Now, I can't freehand a circle to save my life, and if you couldn't create a wreath by eye either, then here is a tip for you. I've got a ribbon spool here. If you haven't got a ribbon spool, you might have a mug or a little dish, and I'm just going to lightly draw around it in pencil. I'm using a 2B pencil, which is soft, and I know it will rub out easily. There we are. Hoping you can see that. That has given me a circle to work with. Now I can stamp over the top of that and then still erase the pencil. So that's the first step. Then I'm going to do some stamping. And again, I won't do the whole thing, but just to give you an idea, and I need a couple of extra stamps out of here. 1, 2, 3, 4 stamps. Ooh, okay, so bear with me while I very quickly clean some of these, because I haven't left out the blocks for these. Let's quickly clean these up. I'm sticking these to a block on the other side of my desk rather than leaving them loose on my desk, just in case any of you were horrified that I might be losing stamps. It's so easy to lose a stamp. All right, so back to this. So I'm going to start off with my largest image, which is the mussel shell, and I've got my Night of Navy ink, and I'm just going to do a background layer of stamping, and I'm not going to stamp full strength, that's quite dark. So that's second, That's third generation. What's fourth generation like? So I think third. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to stamp off twice. Once, twice. And I'm going to just put these at roughly equal intervals. I'm going to try and fit 5 on if I can, because odd numbers look better than even numbers. There we are. So 5 muscles on there. Then I'm going to come in with Balmy Blue and this little kind of Murex. I think it's a Murex. And probably, yeah, stamp off once. And I'm just filling in some gaps. So I've done that one 3 times. I've got Sahara Sand ink here. And that's really pale if I stamp it off, so I'm just going to use it from the ink pad. And stamp those in. I'm trying to turn the stamp each time. And then I've got this little pearl here. So I want my Petal Pink ink pad. This is quite small, so it will fill in gaps nicely. So do I want that straight from the ink pad? I think I probably do. So let's put one there, one here. And there's a lot going to go on top of these, so I can overlap my stamping a little bit and that will work fine. And I can also come slightly inside the circle with these, or slightly outside if I want. There we are. So I've just put some background stamping down there. And at this point I can erase that pencil line. Except I know exactly where my eraser is. And that is not in front of me. So you're going to have to imagine I've done that. I've just packed that up for something else, so so I haven't got that. The next stage then is to stamp and die cut some pieces and parts. So I've got a whole lot of them here. Excuse me, coughing. So this is from the Texture Chic dies. I don't think they're called that. I think they're called the Chic dies. I've die cut this from the Distressed Gold paper and I put the adhesive sheet on the back. And what I've done, this was one and I've just snipped pieces out of it. So you can see I've just snipped out some little sections and stuck them down. This is such a fine die cut that having the adhesive sheet on the back makes life much easier. So just some irregular shapes and I've just spaced those out around here. So I laid those down and then I have stamped and die cut some of the images from the Seaside Bay stamp set. I'm just trying to pick these up and lift them up to show you. So a selection of those in the same colours. So I've used Sahara Sand, Balmy Blue, Petal Pink again. I've die cut some using the same set of dies, some shapes from some of the patterned paper, including some of the papers with gold on them. And then I've also used, are these called the Chic dies? Yes, they are. The Chic dies, so they're in the Textured Chic suite. There are some seashells in here. So I've cut some of those as well from the patterned paper. So I've cut just one of these large kind of scallop shells. And there's this kind of open sea snail, which I really liked. So again, I've cut that from some of the papers. So again, featuring Petal Pink, Balmy Blue, and then this gold. So I just die cut, stamped and die cut a whole pile of these, and then I started to arrange them on here. And I'm not going to do the whole lot. I'll just do a little section up here just to give you an idea for how I worked it. And because you're not stuck sticking anything down, it doesn't matter whether you like what you do or not, because you can come back in and alter it. And I'm layering these, some of them on top of each other. And once I've got all my pieces around the whole wreath, what I do next is I take a photograph on my phone. I'm hoping you can see here, I've got layers of things. So if I take a photograph of that, then I can slide everything off and then start to build it back up. So my bottom layer of die cut pieces I glued down flat, and then the pieces that laid on top of that I glued down using dimensionals. So this actually becomes much more 3D. So some of these pieces here are on dimensionals. I should have said actually before I put any of these little die cut pieces on, I did stamp in the middle. So I stamped Wishing You Everything Wonderful, which is from Charming Sentiments. It's a really nice stamp set, this one here. So I stamped that in Night of Navy ink. Then I arranged all my pieces, photographed them, and then gradually stuck them down. I added some of the flat backed pearls, and I added a double bow in that beautiful ribbon. So it's very straightforward to make a card like that. You just need to take it in stages. Hi Sandy. Sandy, sorry I'm late. My husband took me out for lunch. We'll catch the rest this weekend. Well, that sounds wonderful. Very nice to go out and have lunch with your husband. I'm glad you could join me for the last little bit and enjoy your catch up over the weekend. All right, so I've come to the end of things now. I'm just going to pick up all these little bits and then I can spread out a little bit more and remind you of what we've made this afternoon. So obviously this one I've told you about and shown you, but I didn't actually make it live. I don't know if I can fit all these on. Yes, I can. There we are. So we started off with the simple card. It's really just patterned paper plus a stamped sentiment. We moved on to this one where there was lots of inking and stamping, and I brought in some other stamp sets that fit this kind of seaside or beach theme. And then one here which makes perhaps something slightly unconventional, which is the wreath using the seashells, and actually that's my favourite. I do really like that one. I hope very much indeed that you've enjoyed this afternoon. Let me just bring you back up so I can smile at you. So bye. Oh, that hasn't registered. That's better. I wish Facebook would change that button back so that it went coloured when it had kind of registered that I touched it. With these touch screens, you never quite know unless you've got some indication whether it's actually felt your touch or not. But anyway, I'm up the right way now. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've got a lovely weekend planned, and I will be back here at 2 o'clock next Friday for some more Stampin' Chat. And until then, happy stamping. Let me see if I can actually finish this. There we go. There's the finish button. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.